What's good? I'm Kinell, and this is Sinister Cinema, where we get deep into the guts of the stranger side of cinema. Just letting you know with this little bit at the start that we now have a Patreon. Sub up to that, and you can get all these episodes early and ad-free, so you won't even see this bit at the start. You get them a few days before the main episodes drop out. We've got some great guests coming up. We've got some studio episodes. We've got some Zoom episodes with some fantastic rappers talking about the films they love and the films that influenced them. We got a lot going on there. Plus, you get some bonus content like film reviews, all that kind of thing. I don't need to explain this to you. You know what a Patreon is. But yeah, it's patreon.com/Kinell Sinister Cinema. So check that out. Peace. Yes, people. What's good? I'm Kinell, and this is Sinister Cinema, where we get deep into the guts of the stranger side of cinema. Kinell Sinister Cinema is brought to you by Forgotten Sons Apparel. Check them out at forgottensonsapparel.co.uk. Forgotten Sons Apparel is a York-based streetwear brand drawing inspiration from alternative culture, tattoos, film, classic TV and cartoons from our childhood. In our own words, if you like our stuff half as much as we do, then we like it twice as much as you. I'm a big fan of this brand and I love the guys who make it. They've supported me for years, way before I was podcasting. They supported me in my battle rap career. You might have seen me rocking some of their garms on Don't Flop and other leagues. I love Forgotten Sons Apparel and I'm urging you all to check them out at forgottensonsapparel.co.uk. Right, now on with the show. I'm muting myself. Oh my God, what a terrible start. It is the KSC, and I am Mr. Always Out of Buzz of every rhyme I wrote, and everybody knows me like the Wi-Fi code, Kinell himself. And I don't know what I'm doing this morning. It's not even the morning, it's the evening. I am all over the place. It is one of them. It has been a hectic day. But when it's time to record, that is exactly what I do to make sure I get it over to you. And to be honest, I'm getting really sick of the adverts and the inserts at the start. So I'm going to have to redo them because they're even doing my head in at this point. But yeah, safe. So yeah, as I've explained to you there, it's all over the place at the minute. I don't know what's going on. I don't even know what this podcast is anymore. I just like doing it. And yeah, it's vaguely films, but is it films? It's just about influences and all this. Sometimes I get on guests that are like people who are like proper experts in their field. And, you know, things like check out the episode on Evil Dead with Connor from Unleash the Ghouls, or check out the Drunken Horror episode on the Chucky franchise. You know, I get people who have a real passion for stuff, and I really like to hear them sort of sharing and celebrating things with me. Other times, check the last episode with Danny McLaughlin. It's just all about vibes. I just get people on that's vibes. Very rarely, once in a while, I'll get on someone that I don't really know, but I just get the impression that they're vibes. And that is what we're doing today. So I would like to welcome to the KSC, Mr. Ghast Buff.
That's good. Pleasure to be here. Glad someone else is having a day that's been about as structured as mine. So good. I'm on the right wavelength. No prep, nothing.
Yeah, been all over the shop at the minute, man. I went through a big phase last year when I didn't watch a battle for the whole of last year. I was in more battles than I watched last year because I had a phase where I couldn't watch them. But I love the battle rap culture. I love seeing what comes up. I love seeing new developments. And like in that period when I wasn't even watching the battles, sort of you came across my timeline and managed to keep me entertained and invested with battles, even when I wasn't invested with battles, man.
No, I appreciate it, man. Thank you. I did kind of like jump into the whole scene with both feet last year. I kind of got involved with everything that I could, really. Like I'm a reasonably new fan to the whole thing, and it just seemed like there was so many different like little pockets to jump in on that I kind of jumped in on all of them at once. So it seems to be working for what it's worth.
Yeah, that's quite interesting to me because like I always find it fascinating when like people get involved with battling. Normally, most people who get involved with battling, some of them don't, but normally like their background is in rap. But I always find it like interesting when people have like other creative outlets that they've developed beforehand, and they've got like, you know, a different kind of level of creativity like that. And I think that's very much the case with you.
Yeah, for sure. Like I think like a lot of people in the battle scene, I come from more of a theater background. Like I don't know how like biographical you want me to go on this, if this is the kind of direction that we want the podcast to go. But yeah, I started not really knowing what I wanted to do when I was a teenager. I kind of like I was a smart kid at first, but then progressively kind of petered out and like made a balls up on my GCSEs and didn't really know what I wanted to do.
One of these that was like kind of intelligent, and as a result of which you didn't have to work. And then when it got to the point when you had to actually put a bit of work in,
yeah,
you didn't have the ethic.
It was one of those ones like Peterborough is a terrible city. Like we didn't have the best funded schools or attended schools. We like at the time I was going into my A levels, my secondary was merging with another, so it was like both sets of faculty thought they were being laid off, so everyone stopped really giving a shit. Like people were put in teaching lessons that they weren't taught in, so everything that I could have really studied to get a good GCSE and that maybe would have led to a decent career like business or IT, the faculty wasn't there, so my grades suffered. So I ended up being really restricted in terms of what I could actually take as an A level. But luckily, the school that I went to out of the two merged ones ended up being like this really overfunded media academy. It had a stupid name. If you look it up, it's now the Queen Catherine Academy. But for the first 10 years, it was called the Voyager. So
Voyager.
Oh yeah. So
you went to fucking school in fucking Star Trek.
In space, yeah. So I was the oldest kid. I say kid, I was 18, but like I was the oldest student at this space age school, and I just ended up doing drama. I got roped into drama because I was the kid that would always, when we were doing Shakespeare and stuff like that in English literature, I would always go ham on the reading of it just so that I didn't bore myself to sleep. And they ended up seeing that and they thought, do you want to just be in the panto since you like theatrics so much? I thought, oh, sure, why not? I'm not doing nothing else. I'm dropping out in like 2 weeks. And ironically, it was that random panto that made me go, hey, I'm not actually that bad at this. And ended up following that up through sixth form, through uni. Moved to Bristol because it was allegedly a good theatre city. And then every theatre I've acted in since has closed down or gone bust or been gentrified into student housing. But
do you take any responsibility for that? Like, was it the plays that you were in that were causing the closures?
No, I did a couple of musicals. I did tech on a couple of, but again, that's very similar to how I've been with battle rap. Was when I got involved in stuff, I'd dip my toe in everything. Like I'd want to see how the lighting rigged worked, how how the theater was. I'd always want to edit the footage when it was done. I'd always want to make the flyers or the posters. I never wanted to just be either side of the camera and stay there.
Yeah, and, man.
A lot of that's translated to battle rap.
The editing's an interesting thing, man, because I mean, like you've edited a couple of battles, but really it was like the sort of viral, like little edit mini sort of like memes that you were sort of doing, and like the Koj Twittermatic universe and stuff that sort of got you kind of like recognized on like an international scale within our weird little scene and that. Like, I'm quite interested in that. Like it occurs to me like, okay, I'm going to make some assumptions. I do no research, but like, just based on what you look like, I assume that a lot of your media influences, I assume you're a bit of an internet OG. I assume you've been around since the very early memes, since like the rathergood.coms kind of
Absolutely.
era.
Yeah, like I've been around on the internet for as long as I was able. Like I had a computer when I was like 7. I was on the internet in like the early 2000s, like late 90s. I remember really old image boards and all sorts of the like back when you had a choice of search engine when Google wasn't the default. Like I think like one of the things I asked for my 16th birthday was a Something Awful account. That's like how ingrained in internet I've been for time. So
fucking hell, man. Yeah, that is some old school shit. And another thing that I've pretty much just assumed off your facial hair alone is like I'm guessing you're kind of into anime
Oh yeah, it's
like
the
that.
patches that give it away. Clearly.
Yeah, man, it's like fucking like, you're out here, you've got the kind of like musketeer thing going on, like, that's something that comes from that's not something that comes from the fashion that's around you. That's something that comes from the media you consume. If you know
Absolutely,
what I
it's
mean.
like, yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's ingrained. Like if I didn't watch it, I'm sure this bit would grow in for sure.
yeah,
But
man, it
no, it's
fucking
like
happens.
but yeah, it's like a lot of that was just a case of I wasn't sure how well it was going to go because of that. The whole, whatever. He's not. I'm clearly not a rapper. I don't rap. Like I'm in my 30s. I'm anime nerd, American, overseas wife. All these things that I thought would be like, I'm going to be an easy target. They're not going to take me seriously. But it didn't take that
Fucking
long for
hell,
me to
man, that
realize that.
shows how
Like,
inexperienced you are with battle rap when you
I
thought
know,
that
right?
fucking being into anime would count against you. I'm here like fucking 8 or 9 years deep of people going, what the fuck is he talking about? What the fuck is a fusion dance? What the
Like that
Mate,
was
the
another thing.
amount of
Like when I
fucking bars I've failed to understand over the years because of my lack of knowledge of Dragon Ball Z is fucking incredible.
like when I went over to iBattle and like one of the bars used against me was like this really intricate scheme about a very specific Yu-Gi-Oh card. And there's me like going, oh, this is actually fire. Clearly only I get this. And there's like a dozen dudes in the crowd going, yeah, Jinzo. I'm like, oh, this is my crowd. This is perfect.
It's mad. It's mad. The only people I know that are like really into anime, like from like mostly it's people like I know from battling, like right as opposed to like other sort of aspects of culture that I'm invading. They're like fucking either like the biggest nerds or an actual murderer.
I like to think I'm somewhere in the middle, preferably. But like, I think it's just because of my age group. Like, I was at the age where like I was old enough when like Dragon Ball Z and Gundam and all that stuff had just started coming onto Cartoon Network, where I was just the right age to think it was the coolest shit ever. To think of like a cartoon where people bleed and die, like nothing better than that as far as 8-year-old me was concerned. And then obviously like the generation after me, which feels weird to say, like they had the same with like your Narutos and your Bleaches. But like I don't know if you ever remember CNX. Like
I
for
do
the
not
life
know
of me,
what that is.
okay, CNX, it was a channel on NTL, which is now Virgin Media, but it was like the teen version of Cartoon Network. And if it was still on TV to this day, I'd still be watching it because it would
Yeah.
be
Well,
like,
is it like those Cartoon Network shows, but there's an odd nipple and like the blood's a bit more
oh, kind
visible?
of like, so the way it would go, it would be like cartoon, like your Dexter's Lab and your Powerpuff Girls, and all the homemade stuff would be on until about 5. Then you'd have like an hour of Dragon Ball Z, then an hour of Gundam Wing, then an hour of Sailor Moon. Then you'd have like Samurai Jack or some other like more experimental show up until about 9. Then you'd have an hour of what's now Adult Swim from 9 till 10. Then you'd have a Kung Fu movie, like a random
Yes.
like 70s wuxia, like barely legible dub. Like you'd have one of them from like 10 until midnight or 1 in the morning, and then you'd get like your adult anime like Outlaw Star or Cowboy Bebop or like the more adults things. And then if you stayed up until like 2 in the morning, then you'd get stuff like the animated Spawn. Like, so it would just be
The
like,
animated Spawn, I do remember. That was very fucking good.
yeah, so you get like that, or you get the Max, or like one of the like the
Yeah, the
MTV
Max.
backed
Yeah,
anime. Like,
that's
so you just have this 8-hour programming block of great shit. It was so good, but it was only on TV for like 2 years, I think.
yeah. So like, and it's all these weird hours. So like at that like early teenage stage in your life, you're developing like insomnia and fucking like early internet meme culture, and that's how you get into fucking editing.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Cartoon Network would end and the wrestling would play. You know what I mean? Like, so I'd be watching Samurai Jack and then WCW until 1 in the morning. So
yeah. I got kind of a
childhood
different
was great.
relationship with anime because I'm like, that bit older and like fucking not from the like never had Sky kind of like thing. So like fucking it was like your Akira's and all that was like sort of my anime, the manga entertainment stuff that was coming out on
Oh yeah.
video. like Guyver and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, or like the mid-90s. They're almost like the anime equivalent, like the video nasties, like things like your Genociders or like your Violence Jacks, or things where like it's got like an
Cyber City Weedo 808,
inordinately large budget and an even more inordinate body count. It's incredible.
Yeah, fucking like I love that stuff. So like when like fucking all your Dragon Ball Zs and fucking your Naruto's and that came in, like it was like I was like, where's all the murder? And like fucking so I drifted away from that. And like now, like very recently, I'm like sort of rediscovering anime and finding out there's like a lot of stuff that still appeals to my violent tastes. I was talking to Quill about it on the Quill episode. Check that out. That was another fine episode. And I think like I've missed the boat on some series. He's like, oh yeah, there's one series. It's fucking amazing. Like there's 900 episodes. Like, but when you get to episode 300, wow, there's a block of about 200 that's really good. But you've got to watch 300 episodes first. And like,
yeah, like. They've kind of gone out of fashion of that regard. It's only really like the big series that go on for that sort of length of time. Like Eve,
well, it's the only ones that could, like, you know, nothing news like that. Like, you know, maybe like
a lot
Chainsaw Man. I watched an episode.
Like a lot of the big series, they've kind of gone for the new format because they've realized that Blu-ray sales aren't really selling unless they're worth putting on a box set. Like the likes of your Bleach and your One Piece that could run for like your 400 odd episodes, you don't really get them very much these days. It's even My Hero Academia, which like as far as manga is concerned is still one of the biggest series. Even they prefer to go for like the more modern approach where they stick to the manga, they adapt it as is, but they only do like, you know, 13 to 26 episodes a year rather than One Piece, which will, you know, run until the sun burns out.
Just like straight up fucking torturing those like fucking like Korean sweatshops where they do the in between things in it. Like,
yeah, Chainsaw Man I adore. I think Chainsaw Man is probably one of my favorite series. It's the only manga I can ever recall where I've read the whole thing start to finish in like a day's sitting. Just binged about 100 chapters, and the actual adaptation has just surpassed it. Because Studio Mappa and Mad Men, I think they're working on that. They're working on like Jujutsu Kaisen. They're working on the final series of Attack on Titan. They're doing like 5 S-tier series. Like they've just announced they're doing the new One Punch Man, and they're simultaneously just demolishing every series they work on. It's weird. I don't know where they get the time.
Yeah, fucking like so like sometimes it happens like, you know, it can happen with like with movies like fucking like certain special effects houses or something, or like what we call it, there's certain like indie studios that just fucking like nail their one, that just get their niche and they can just fucking carry it through. And I suppose that must be the same kind of thing, really. Like, but yeah, fucking yeah, I don't have a clue about these things. We can't rediscover it. Like I know about Junji Ito. Like fucking I got onto like Uzumaki and all that kind of thing. I think that's coming out as a series, isn't it?
I hope so. The thing with Ito is he's always been very unlucky with his adaptations. They've always given them to like small studios that never really give it like the budget or care it deserves. Like they'll always give it to like some randomer who's only ever directed like cutesy music videos, and it's like, why is this guy getting a Junji Ito series? And then you'll see it, and it's like, it's basically just like stilled, badly traced images of the source material. There's almost no point in adapting it. Like Gyo was terrible. Like the Junji Ito collection was terrible. Like, but I think because like Uzumaki is like his definitive work, they can't phone it in with this one. I mean, but then again, I said the same about Berserk, and that was terrible as well. So,
I fucking yeah, flipping it's quite interesting stuff. I think like he's like a crossover thing, and he Junji Ito, like, and like fucking, you know, he might be what we call it, like, you know, like one of many like sort of creators in that environment, but like you will get fucking people outside of Japan that like only know fucking Junji Ito and Akira and that, like me.
Yeah, but he's kind of reached that level as a creator where you kind of almost have to mention him almost before the work. Like
Yeah.
it's like Silent Hill. Like if you mention Silent Hill, people immediately think of Akira Yamaoka's music because it's just such a key part of it. Like Junji Ito is almost bigger than any collection of his work. Like, you know, I love Enigma of Amigara Fault. Like that's a fantastic one shot. It's one of my favorite one shots ever done. I really enjoy Gyo.
What's that? The one with the holes and that in
the one with the holes in the cliff. Yeah.
Yeah, fucking like it is kind of mad like that. But yeah, I was going somewhere and I forgot where I was fucking going. But I tell you what, he does have like, because I what's it called it? I use an Android box and a VPN to get this American streaming service called Tubi, which is a mad streaming service. Like there's certain things that like only exist on Tubi, like this one free streaming service with adverts in America, like. And like I checked a couple of live action Tamiya or however you pronounce it, fucking films on there, and they're fucking ace. They're just very very cheap J horror like, and I think like that Tamiya as a property is brilliant because like every story is just like it's just some mad shit happening, and there's this one girl in it, and she might not even be the same girl that was in the other stories. She's just got the same name and looks a bit the same. So I think there's like something like 15 live action movies of that character. Like
that's crazy. Is it like public domain? Do you think, or do they just license it out to anyone? Is it one of them?
I don't know. There's like because that's something I'm like more familiar with is like sort of world of J horror.
And
like there's a lot of it that's like what you call it, very low budget and all like we know about like your Ringus and your Jew on the Curse and all this kind of thing, but you don't realize like how much cheap shit they got. Like, I mean, like Arrow, one of my favorite Blu-ray labels, they put out just before Christmas the Jew on box set, and like the only films I was familiar with it is what we call it, Jew on the Curse and Jew on the Curse 2, and but like they were based off like two shot on video straight to video films like that kind of like got a bit of a cult following, and what you call it, like so much for sort of word of mouth cult following, say, oh, let's put some money in and like let's make them big films, and they start popping overseas and all this, and you see the originals, I'm like, wow, this is shot like Neighbours from 1984. Like so cheap, and like they sort of went into a phase where there was like they got White Ghost and Black Ghost on there, also like fucking insanely cheap production value on them, like, but they fucking bang. Like the Ju-On formula is like fucking so simple and so effective. It's like someone turns up, there's something weird happening at a house, scary thing, cut to black. And then it fucking happens again, and it turns out that a bunch of the scary things are linked, and that's the film. So they could just keep making it like at different levels and different budgets.
I remember watching. Have you ever seen? Oh fuck! What were the characters' name? Have you ever seen Sadako versus Kayako? It's Ring versus Grudge, basically. Like it's such a weird film because it's almost like the Japanese equivalent in terms of actual tone of Freddy versus Jason. Like you've got these two like horror cultural touchstones, and they've almost got no reason to fight. Like it's almost like it's almost like a Grudge film where Sadako just happens to be there. Almost.
Yeah,
like,
very much that like and like I like the fact that like they just said like, yeah, fuck it. These two are just gonna have one daft film where they have a fucking scrap. And like, I mean, like fucking like, you know, we talk about Freddy versus Jason, but I mean, like, really, the Japanese were the originators of what should we call it, like, you know, two big properties having a scrap. Like, if you take it back to the kaiju films, like, you know, the first one after Godzilla, Godzilla versus King Kong in the 70s, like.
So I'm a massive kaiju fan. I'm a massive tokusatsu fan just in general. Like I always, only like the last couple of years where I've just kind of gone, fuck it, I'm in my 30s, I pay tax, I'll like what I want. I've started getting like really into like the Kamen Riders and like the original Power Rangers, the Super Sentai series. I've been binging them. They're so ridiculous but so enjoyable. But The thing about
Tubi's a good source for that shit, man. It's got all the fucking like 70s like fucking Cayman Rider and all that shit on.
I'll give that a look. Like the thing that got me about Sadako versus Kayako is it's directed by the guy who did Noroi, which is one of my favorite horror films ever, in terms of like actually
Noroi
building
is such
suspense.
a banger, like.
But where was any of that in this film? You know,
this is it. I felt like fucking like I think like being a good director in fucking Japan is about like fucking just knowing like, okay, this is what the film is. I'm gonna fucking make it. If you look at fucking like Takahashi Miike.
I was literally about to say Takashi Miike, like just makes whatever he wants, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean like fucking like I think he put out like fucking like I'm gonna have to check the dates, but it's around that time. I think he put out like fucking Audition, fucking Happiness of the Katakuris, and like Visitor Q in like the same year, and that and they weren't even the only films he did that year.
I feel like Takashi Miike just kind of shows up on set and everyone just lets him direct, because there's no reason that the guy that did like Ichi the Killer should also have made the Phoenix Wright film or like a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure film, but he does. And they're quite good. They're probably better than they have any right being.
Yeah, but he's got a vision for anything he turns his hand to. I've been watching Connect on Disney Plus. Do you know about this?
I haven't seen that yet, but it's on my list.
Yeah, I'm 3 episodes deep in it. And it's pretty fire, like as you imagine it would be. Like fucking like Mika Takahashi Miike. I don't know these things. I'm not culturally aware. If you want cultural awareness, check out my pod. Check out the pod on Incantation with Amber T from Hornblood Fire, and just check out Hornblood Fire's work in general. She is like much more familiar with this kind of East Asian horror scene than me, and like she's my plug for this kind of stuff. She says like this is good. I just watch it. But like with Takahashi Miike's work, like I mean, like it's been really fucking influential on the West in a way that a lot of people like don't acknowledge. Like, 'cause I mean, like right at the start, we had because obviously horror is kind of my area. Talk a lot about the sort of torture porn movement, and like where that and like at first that was just like remakes, like your Hills Have Eyes and your Texas Chainsaws and that. Where gets original is like Hostel, and like fucking like Hostel is like basically Eli Roth, the guy who made this funny cabin fever movie, this big splatter gore. Like he takes that on tour round, and like at the same time going around all the film festivals, auditions going round. So he sees that and goes, "Fuck, I got to make films like this." And Takahashi Miike like just appears in Hostel, and like that's when we get like Quentin Tarantino producing shit, and we get this whole change of tone that like sort of affected like horror for like years going forward. But at the same time, if we look at action movies, because like Ichi the Killer, it came like in the wake of like we'd already had The Matrix and all this kind of thing coming out. But like I think fucking like because it was based off a manga, I understand. But Ichi the Killer, yeah, it's like it's the first one where you see a dude get split in half, and he looks a bit shocked, and then suddenly the two sides of his body start sliding apart. Fucking every film after that, like all like your Resident Evils and all, and like there was that whole sort of post-Matrix genre, wasn't it? And like everyone had a like looking shocked and you've actually been cut in half. Like Mika started that with that, like I think it was an anime thing, but he was the first one to sort of like do it live action.
Yeah,
and that's what sort of translated it.
He's so. I think the thing I love about Mika is he's so indulgent in the way that he does things. Like there's certain films that just end in chaos for no reason. Like I forget which one it is, but I'm sure there's one where like the world just explodes. Like and up until that point, it was just a reasonably generic like Yakuza revenge story. But
you mentioned Noroi earlier, like that. Noroi the Curse. That's a favorite film of mine. Are you familiar with Incantation?
I'm not.
Did you
No,
catch that last year?
it's been on my list. Like I hear a lot of talk about it, but I haven't had a chance to catch it yet.
Excellent film, fucking, particularly if you're a Roy fan. Like that's more like I'm shouting out fucking Amber again, fucking Horn Blood Fire, like fucking that was like she was the only person like fucking in the English speaking world that knew about fucking incantation when it was in development. And like she was she's familiar with the director, all this is Taiwanese guy, and she's got and like she had like one picture and like some article in fucking like not gonna pretend to know what the Taiwanese language is like, but it's whatever that is. And fucking like she was like emailing the studio in a what you call it, like using Google Translate and fucking that kind of thing to try and get hold of a screener. And then suddenly Netflix pick it up and just dump it on the service with like no announcement. But like, cause she was there going, you've got to watch this, you've got to watch this. She's like fucking like patient
Ground
zero for the word of mouth that sort of turned it into a cult hit.
That's crazy. Like me and my housemates that I used to live with them, we were all different varies of horror buff, where I was more, I imagine much like yourself, more of a bigger fan of like the like late 70s, early 80s, like, you know, slasher, sort of B-movie, big plastic costume full of practical effects and blood and gut. Like, any trauma film I'll happily watch. Like I could watch the original Toxic Avenger all day. Like, you know, the likes of your Jasons. I was a massive Saw buff, and like you say, your torture porn. Like I would debate people on like the ethics of Jigsaw at uni. That was a thing that I used to do, just because I loved that series, and even the ones that I thought were terrible still gave me enough like conversational filter. But whereas they were more,
I'll
the fans
always
of,
watch
like,
a Saw film, like fucking
always.
like I'll watch it the weekend it comes out, and fucking I'll have nothing but people telling me it's terrible. I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah,
and
I'll probably agree.
It a bit.
but I'll probably agree it's
enjoyment
terrible and still like write a thesis on it practically.
Yeah, man.
But like my housemates, they were always the more a fan of like your creeping dread, your J horror, you know, the looming threat where, you know, the bad guy is a schoolgirl and there's no real ending, that kind of film, which yeah, it was always nice to kind of watch it and have those moments. Like the mid 2000s I thought were a really good time for just going to HMV, dropping a $5 on a DVD and just probably getting something good. Like I know we've talked about this briefly,
Carton Asia era, like and like the 80s stuff's all we're all on like cheaper, what you call it, reissues then. So
yeah, and it was always good to like, you could pick a director at random and they'd probably made something that no one had ever heard of that was pretty good. Like we've talked about this briefly. I really enjoyed Dead Silence. I think that's really slept on as a horror film. Like I quite like Shrooms, if you've seen that. I'm a big fan of unreliable narrator horror.
The Irish one.
Yeah, I think that's a great little horror film. There would be just these periods where we would just get rat-arsed on a Friday night and just see what was terrible on Netflix, and half the time we'd go into Amazon Video trying to find some horror, and it would be like someone's actual documentary that they'd made about space because it was tagged incorrectly. There was this awful horror film. I wish I could remember what it was called for the life of me, but it's burned into my mind, where I think they tried to film it like it was found footage, where they told a bunch of like random Essex people that they were going on a ghost walk or something, because you can tell these people aren't actors. It's just a cab full of like people from Essex just being like, I don't believe in ghosts, but I think if I saw one, I'd believe in them. And it goes on for like an uncomfortably long amount of time. And, you know, they're filming with like fake experts and taking them on ghost walks. And it almost looks like just camcorder footage of people having a genuine day out, right up until the last 20 seconds, where it's just a guy that looks like Jimmy Savile dressed as a milkman, just slashing people with like stock Warcraft 3 effects. And it's god awful. But I've always remembered the hour and a half I've wasted on that film. I wish I could remember it for the life of me.
Yeah, flipping what should we call it? Like there was a point Amazon Prime was like the plug for like stuff like that. But just I'll tell you what though, Tubi, even more the plug.
Yes, I'll check that out after this.
If you watch some like fucking, if you watch like a bit of fucking ropey found footage and a bit of your fucking Cayman Riders on a Tubi as soon as you fucking like get on it. Need a VPN, like set it to America. Like have an evening of that. And the next day, fucking when you log in, your fucking recommendation algorithm will be going some deep places.
Yeah, something I want to ask, Kinell, I don't know if you've ever gone into this like in any of your channels. I'm sure you've covered like horror games. I know you're doing your Dead Space playthrough at the minute. Like, have you ever covered things like horror tabletop, like, you know, the likes of like board games or RPGs or anything of that regard?
No, I've never really had like any kind of investment with sort of tabletop. So I've never been around people that have it, but I'm kind of become interested now. Like fucking like it's since I did the episode with fucking Stowaway on Cyberpunk, because like I fucking like we did that episode like you know flipping. I don't know if he is knocking about Bristol, but he normally is. But what's it called? He suggested doing an episode on Cyberpunk, and like I hadn't really thought of it as a subject. When we were talking about it, and all the films are like Blade Runner and fucking RoboCop, and it's fucking Akira and all this, I realized like, wow, I love all this shit. So I got like this kind of like extra fucking like level of investment. So that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to watch every Cyberpunk movie, feature film, not made for TV, but made for direct to video and streaming do count. I'm trying to watch them all this year. I like fucking. I bought a fucking like Xbox, like, and you know I've never been a fucking like gaming person for years. Like fucking since like fucking PlayStation 1. And like fucking, I couldn't work tank controls because I got this praxia and fucking ADHD and shit. Well, so I've just got into gaming like with an Xbox since October. I've been playing Cyberpunk on that. One of the things he like directed me to on the episode, it was like one of my favorite movies. I reckon you'll fuck with it and all is Hackers.
Oh yeah, the old Angelina Jolie one.
Yeah. But one thing like what's it called? I'll find the link and send it to you. As he directed me like over lockdown is like a video of like a game of like Cyberpunk RPG played over fucking Zoom, and fucking what's his name? He's out screaming all. Matthew Lillard.
Oh yeah.
He's playing Cyberpunk as his character, serial killer in character.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I've tried Cyberpunk. I haven't tried the new version yet, but Cyberpunk, it's just a playable Argos catalog. Like character creation, like you spend longer making your character than they'll probably be alive. Like there's just pages upon pages of gear and augments. Like it's exhausting, and then you just like half the character creation process is rolling for all of the terrible shit that happened to you throughout your life. It's a neat little system.
I know the feeling, man. That sounds makes sense to me.
Like, but no, I'll bring it up because obviously, like, horror's had quite a pretty big steeple in the tabletop scene since at least the early 90s, as far as I know. It's probably longer. Like, I'm reasonably new to it myself, but like the World of Darkness line, as far as I'm aware, is the only thing that's really ever made a dent, like in the Dungeons and Dragons monopoly back when that was the hugest of huge things. Like Vampire the Masquerade.
There's Vampire the Masquerade and all.
Yes,
like,
that's their like
that's the computer games.
That's their main one. But it's only really in the past like 10 or so years that I've seen the indie scene really start to balloon. I think the problem with horror tabletop was it seemed like everyone was either playing, you know, the World of Darkness line, which is fair because like Vampire, Werewolf, Geist, Mage, they're all fantastic books, but there was this weird little schism when no one could really work out who owned what. And now it's at the point where two different companies run two different lines of Vampire, and they almost try to step on each other's toes as to which one is the legitimate one. It's a weird thing that I could go into at length for about 20 minutes, but like, the indie horror scene kind of fell into a point where everyone seemed to think that horror meant that your game had to have a sanity mechanic. Like everything would always be like a derivative.
I do. I am kind of like aware of like Call of Cthulhu because like they used to do episodes of Chapo Trap House where instead of doing their normal episode, they play Call of Cthulhu. Like, So I'm
Yeah,
aware of that
like
one. Is that like that's like an old fucking tabletop game, isn't it?
mm,
That's sort of where the sanity thing came from, isn't it?
yeah, and it seemed like for a while, like my housemates, they were working on this game. I was part of it originally, but I'm terrible at sticking to deadlines, and working on things other than my own amusement just kills my interest in it. So if I was working on it, it probably would have never been released. But they made their own horror game called Locus, which is it's basically just meant to be like a more cinematic horror RPG, which came about pretty much from frustration at everything on the market either being Call of Cthulhu derivative, or like I think Blades in the Dark hadn't quite come out yet, and now a lot of things are based on that. But it was just a case of everywhere you looked, it was just like, oh no, you look at the thing and oh, it's terrible and you're mental now, and it's like that's not really what we look for in horror, and it's certainly not what we look for in horror games. We like just the idea of like, just going to a place that's just a bit evil, that works on horror that's particular to your character and like the experience
Yeah,
you're looking for.
I don't think you could really like kind of instill any kind of tension by going, "Oops, you're insane now." Well,
Yeah,
I was
you
fucking
can't. Like,
insane when I turned up, mate. Fucking
it's
course I
like
was,
I've
mate.
never.
You're already nuts. But I mean, like fucking, like in like computer games and shit, it kind of works where they have something like you'll be disorientated and suddenly you become difficult to control and all this
Hmm.
kind of thing. Like you're not going to get that really reflected in a fucking tabletop game, are you?
I mean, it kind of can. It depends on like how good your DM is, how good the story is, like a bit of music, bit of atmosphere. But it's like I've never been a fan of like the Lovecraftian kind of, oh, you look at thing and oh, that which you can't even begin. Oh, mate, you can't believe how it's gribbly. Like that does nothing for me. Like I've never been a fan of
That
that.
was always Lovecraft's vibe, in it. Like, you know, he didn't never describe anything like, oh, it was fucking mental. Oh, you can't even describe it.
Yeah, I didn't
You're
like
an author,
penguins though,
mate. You're
did
an
he?
author. Like,
Like,
it's your job. Describe the fucking thing, mate. Fucking, you
it's
can describe it. Like, fucking, you imagined it.
yeah, never been a fan of that. I was always a fan of like PS1 style horror. I think a lot of it because of like the low poly texture, where everything's like super like it's hard to be scared by 4K. I find like looking at just a slightly burned dude is less scary to me than like foggy draw distance because they couldn't render the full
Yeah.
street, or like a thing where you can't quite tell what it is because the guy's got like 6 pixels for a face.
Yeah.
Like I mean, FromSoft are quite good at it, like your Dark Souls and your Elden Rings, and have you seen the demakes of them? Like they made Bloodborne in a way that's similar to like PS1 graphics.
No. I don't know about that. Like,
No, it's just one woman's pet project. She just demade Bloodborne onto like remade the music, remade the graphics and the polygons and it just looks like a PS1 game. And it's somehow more unsettling than like the high fidelity PS4 version.
I'm flipping. I rate making things deliberately fucking like worse. Like, fucking like like fucking like 8-bit music, fucking 8-bit
Yeah,
chip tune and shit. Like,
I think it's because like it's kind of how I approach a lot of the promo I do. Like the CodeJ Twitter
yeah,
Mac universe is deliberately that bit shit. Mostly
yeah,
because like I know I don't really have like the animation skill or like the technical know-how for the software I use to make it look professional, but I know what I'm doing enough to know that it looks shit and that what I'm doing
yeah.
suboptimal. And I think a lot of that kind of it's certainly a lot of like meme culture and a lot of like demake stuff. I find that's it's quite charming, like almost like a level of intentional schlock, which I guess a lot of
Yeah.
horror films have as well.
This is it, innit? Like, I always say, like, fucking, I'll take bad practical effects over mid CGI.
Always.
Yeah. Because, like, fucking, with CGI, unless it's perfect, it's shit.
Hmm.
But
And it's like,
fucking,
and CGI is always going to age. Like, so if you start with bad CGI, it's going to be laughable in 5 years.
yeah, and like now we're at a point like where what you call it, the sort of picture is advancing, like, and there's some films that are coming out on like UHD 4K discs now, and like the fucking the graphics in them that still do work in like in like how you'd originally buy it on disc, are just destroyed by how much better the picture is than it probably was on the screen that it was made on.
It's like fascinating. Like if you go back and you look at things like the old PlayStation Castlevanias or like original Final Fantasy sprites, like they're still good artwork, but they were specifically drawn to be seen on a CRT. Like if you look at Dracula's face on like an actual CRT with the scan lines and how it's meant to be seen, it looks like a painting, but that's because they drew the picture with those scan lines in mind. Just putting it on like an LCD screen as is, pixel perfect, it almost ruins the effect.
Yeah, this is it. Like, it's interesting to see how things are going. Like, and obviously, like, because everything is shot digital now. Like, so like nothing can ever improve. Like I keep saying it. Like, you know, it's like things like fucking like Tron Legacy is the example I always use. It was made in 1080p. So, but whereas like with celluloid, you could it's just light. You know, it's just light and images. You can always expand that to what you can always like blow that up to what the latest quality is. So there's already a version of Tron made in the early 80s that looks better than Tron Legacy made 10 years ago.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Like, but it's great for me because like you know now all like the films that I grew up on, like, you know, things like The Thing and all this kind of, like your Evil Deads and all that, I could just get an amazing new copy every time. But there's some films that are just never going to get any better. Like, and it does become a thing of like, you know, you start thinking of like, well, how good do I want this? Like, you know, it's like some films were never meant to be 4K. Like, Like, I believe there's like a what's called it? Arrow have done a 4K of Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, which was shot on like 60mm in Chicago with like no permits. It was done. It was just so grimy, like fucking like, and it's a grimy film. It's meant to feel sweaty and horrible and shitty on you. You're meant to feel dirty watching it, like, and like you can only clean that up so much.
It's like a Hitchcock film. Like there's almost nothing on screen in a Hitchcock film. It's just a person and some birds. But you know, what else would you add? Like it's been shot with that in mind.
Yeah. You know, it's like fucking minimalism's always something like one thing I've got like bought it yesterday. Like I bought a bunch of Blu-rays yesterday from HMV as part of my Cyberpunk rewatch, and I copped Ready Player One, which I haven't seen, like, because I just wasn't impressed with the trailer. But it's on my Cyberpunk list, so I got to watch it. And the 4K disc was a tenner with any purchase. Fucking, you know, at the counter. So I thought, okay, well, it's going to be like fucking £6 to rent it as a VOD, so I might as well just buy this. At least I can take it CEX afterwards. But like, you know, you know, there's so much in that film, and but like, you know, it doesn't really get ratings from people, and like you wonder, like, you know, how much of genius is like what you call it, being able to work within your means. Like you give Steven Spielberg a low budget and a shit rubber shark, and you get one of the greatest movies of all time. You give him infinite money and you get Ready Player One, which is just a bit meh.
Yeah.
Like that, this is it. Like, you know, like and like as we move into this era where there's less and less limitation, comes the point where, like, you know, the great art is going to come from people who insist on putting restrictions on themselves. Because
I think a lot of the I think a lot of the stuff with like Ready Player One is it's kind of in the same vein as like the new Space Jam that came out, where it's coming out to like a very cynical audience these days. Like the original like 90s Space Jam, you know, fair enough, I was 7, so you know, to me it was great to see all those characters on stage. Whereas the new one, it's almost like that kind of, hey, remember that thing you like here it is. And it's like a lot of films like that, and almost like a, you know, post MCU world. I think people are a lot more cynical of these days.
Yeah, because, like, you know, this is it. It has become how much you get things, and then you look at something like Ty West's X from last year, one of my favorite films, and like that has a lot of references to things like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Evil Dead, Hills Have Eyes, but it's not in like, look, here's the thing you recognize. It's like the framing of a shot. It's like, oh shit, they framed that like, and oh, it's a low angle as someone walks up to a house. That's Texas Chainsaw. You know, the first shot, you think, oh yeah, this is this. You know, the shot where someone's like looking through a gap in like a bit of wood. You're thinking that's a reference to Lucio Fulci's Zombie with the bamboo spike and all this, like. But you have to have that knowledge to be able to pick up on it, like, and like there's probably the same degree of fan service in Ty West's X as there is in like a Marvel film, but
just for a different audience, like for a cinematographer's audience, rather than comics and action figures.
But it just hasn't got the big fucking finger pointing to it, the big foam finger going, look at this fucking thing from a thing you remember, the member berries thing.
Yeah, there's loads of that. I mean, fucking like the Akira bike slide is in Nope. You know what I mean? Like,
Akira bike slides in so many things,
many things.
Yeah, I thought that there was like someone did a supercut of like every time it had been used in fucking everything,
like 50 or something ridiculous.
Yeah. Absolutely fucking iconic shit. Like one film I might watch tonight that I've been put on to, because like obviously I'm doing my cyberpunk deep dive at the minute, is can't even remember the name of it. Someone told me the original 1980 Japanese film that inspired Akira, like live action film, and I'll put it on my fucking list on my Arrow player. What was it? Where's my list? The Arrow player is awesome. Have you got this particular streaming service?
No, that's another thing for the list, I think.
Yeah, it's like $3.87 a month. Like it's an unbeatable bargain. Oh yeah, Crazy Thunder Road from 1980.
I've heard of this. I think I've not seen it, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it. I just know it expired Akira, and I've got it on an app that I'm subscribed to, so I can just watch it. So I'm going in from that. It's got Burst City, which I need to look into, and all, like, which is another punk film. It's like kind of an influence on cyberpunk, but it's more the punk side of things. Not really a cyber, but it's like the whole sort of cyberpunk aesthetic. It is like fucking like punks and Japan, isn't it? Like.
Yeah, just blues and pinks. That's all we look for.
Yeah, as we could see with my new overlay here. That's it. Like, I think I want to change it from the cinema seats, and that's AI. I just went to one of those AI things and like typed in Kinell's Sinister Cinema Cyberpunk. Did that, stuck my fucking logo on it. It was one of those ones that says if you're going to use this commercially, you've got to pay for it, and didn't. Fuck you. You didn't fucking pay the artist that you fucking fed into your fucking AI machine.
Stolen it from other people, so
not my dick. Fucking you stole people's intellectual property. I'm gonna steal what your fucking computer program does, and what you gonna do about it, you fucking pussy hole.
Exactly.
You didn't make it.
Like, I think for me, horror is always I'm all or nothing. I'm not someone that does things in moderation. I either want something to be like your Genocybers or your Saws, where it's just like overstimulation, blood up the walls, or just liminal horror where practically nothing happens, where it's just like just a slightly off color business hallway or something like that. Like, I'm not a massive fan of this almost Zoomer take of something quiet's happened, and then it's a mascot or it's a gribbly Spider-Man, and it becomes like like how like Slender Man was cooler when he was just a dude that abducted kids. Like, he didn't need to be like this all-powerful forest
they fucked it up by trying to make it a film, because like Slender Man, it originated with the YouTube videos, the Marble Hornets and all that.
Well, it was originally a Something Awful meme. Like, it was like a weekly like contest of just, hey, make some creepy photos, and this one dude just Super Eye Patch Wolf, the YouTube channel, does some great deep dives on things like liminal horror and the Slender Man mythos in particular. If you've not seen his channel, I recommend it.
Yeah, I'll check that. I'll check that definitely, man. But we're coming up to the hour mark, so I think we're gonna wrap this one. This was good. This was fucking
good.
vibes, man. It was good to fucking talk about some things that I don't normally talk about, and you give me some things to look into there. So fucking buzzing for it. Before we shut down, what do you want to promote? Is there anything you want people to get eyes on? Want to give people your socials, all them thing there?
Yeah, for sure, man. So the best place to find me is twitter.com/Ghast Buff. I make a bunch of funny promo videos for any rap battles I have coming up. It's kind of my thing. It's kind of what I get bookings for more than the raps themselves. I'm going to be representing Venom on Premier Battles this year. I've got a battle coming out on Don't Flop as soon as I get sent the footage to edit that, and probably something else later in the year. I've just had a battle drop on Beast Anglia against Lord Bentner that's been quite well received. So yeah, I'm either on a league or I'm editing battles for a league, and obviously I've just edited your battle against Zen, which should be dropping very soon.
I'm terrified to see that, but also kind of fascinated. That would be the shot battle at the King of the Smokers event. I drank a lot of vodka in a very short space of time, and I think I got to the end of me bars at least, but then I did get to the end of the line. So that'll be a good one. Look out for that. I believe that's dropping on Battle Rap Daily coming soon. Be sure to check Adventure Rhyme. Our last episode, we got flipping tattoos and did rap battles at the same time. I have secured us an excellent little family outing for episode 2. And we might be inviting a few battlers along for that for vibes reasons, because it's going to be a bit of a fun day out. In fact, I'll tell you about it after this. So get on them. This is, of course, the KSC. Subscribe if you are not already. If you're not subscribed and you made it all the way this far in the video, fucking hell. Hit up the Patreon, because the Patreon is good. And socials. Thanks for liking and subscribing. I'm Kinell. He's been Ghast Buff. KSC, safe.